All right, let's see if that's working. Let's refresh. All right, welcome to another live episode of geekoutdoors.com. Right now, I'm just checking to make sure everything works, as you could probably see on the screen. Let me go ahead and get this chat out here. Okay. And I haven't put a title on it yet, so let me go ahead and put a title on this right here because it's not correct. Let's see. Let's say how to create Linux operating system, and we'll just say SUSE Studio and others. Okay, let's just say that. Okay, and so I think that'll be good enough. Let me hopefully that'll save that. Okay, so I think it is working and it is live. So if you haven't seen my original video a few days ago, I actually did my first distro from scratch. Well, not really from scratch. It was actually using a service called SUSE Studio. So eventually, I do want to get to a point where I could actually build a Linux distro from the ground up. So that's really my goal. But at this point, I am just starting with the beginner level stuff. And so if you haven't seen that episode, basically SUSE Studio allows you to use this web-based tool, and it is built upon OpenSUSE. And so from here, you could actually build your own distribution. Okay, and unfortunately, this site, SUSE Studio, will no longer be available after February 15th. What's going to happen is they're going to merge their SUSE Studio with their open build service, OBS, and it's going to be called studioexpress.opensuse. Okay, and so here's the actual current version of the site, and whenever you want to build a template, you would come here and it would go to something like this. Okay, so actually let me show you how that would look like. So it would look something like this. Okay, so this is not actually really user friendly at this point. I don't think it's done yet, but if you compare, here's the new version, right, and here's the older version, which has been around since 2009. It's absolutely amazing that it's been around this long. Okay, and so here, this is the original version, and here's the new version. Okay, and so I find this one a lot easier to use than the new one, because this one, it didn't really make that much sense even at the beginning, whereas this one, everything was really easy to follow. And so I'm thinking that this one's probably still a work in process, and then later on it'll become very user friendly, like something like this. So here on this older version, if you saw my previous video, I did build my complete distro, at least version 1.0, with some software that I thought would be great for it, or at least for the first version, and it was at the end about 1 gig size, and so it wasn't a small distro by any means. And what I'm probably going to do is, at least in this episode, I'm going to kind of do a general walkthrough of what I did, and then kind of show you what I currently have, and then some of the things that I'm not really sure of yet because of the fact that I'm brand new to this. Okay, and so, hey, good morning, Lance. Thank you for joining, and hopefully we'll have other people like Lance and all the regulars come in who do have a lot more, I would say definitely have more technical experience than I do with Linux, because even though I have been using Linux for more than 10 years, I really stopped like tinkering around with it, like maybe, I guess after like a few years. I think like after 5 years, I just kind of like stopped, trying out new distros. I stopped trying to crash my computer all the time. So basically, I just stopped experimenting a lot with Linux, because after a certain point, depending on the type of user you are, after a certain point, you just kind of want to just use your computer, because whenever you do try out new things, as with anything, whether it's a new distro or whether there's a new program, whatever the case might be, new operating systems, it takes you time. And so if you're constantly experimenting, you're constantly having to relearn things. Okay, and so if you are a general person who just wants to move over from something like Windows or Mac over to Linux, obviously you just want to use your computer day to day. And so that's why I really didn't go any further into the whole distro thing. I have mentioned that before, where I just did not think it was an easy thing to do. And back then, I don't think it was easy, because Linux was not as easy as it is now. And also at the same time, I didn't really want to spend a lot of time on it. But now that I've started in this stage, I think it gives me a different perspective, so I kind of can appreciate a lot of what is offered in a distro, because I've used Linux for so long. But at the same time, not really digging deep into how a Linux distro is actually built, it's going to give me even more appreciation. Okay, and so I'm going to open this every now and then, so then I could see the chats whenever people come in. But let me go over kind of what is available in SUSE Studio, really high level. I did go into a little bit, definitely more detail on that episode I did previously. I will leave that in the description area below if you haven't seen it. So basically, through SUSE Studio, when you begin, you're going to do something like this. This is very similar to the new version. In this case, you're going to choose a base template. Okay, so once you choose a base template, it'll come to this screen. Okay, here on your start screen, this is where you name your distro. Here, this is where you actually choose the type of software that you want in your distribution. And I think this part right here is the most powerful part, because if you have been using Linux for a while, a lot of people choose a distribution primarily for how it's built, first and foremost, and then secondly for the community that's behind it. Okay, like the main reason why I choose Linux Mint is because, number one, the actual software that they put into it. If you look, whenever you install Linux Mint, it has, to me, pretty much everything that you need for a majority of people. Okay, so once you install Linux Mint, you really don't have to go and download a lot of different software. That's the first thing that I really love about Linux Mint. And then secondly, it's extremely stable. Okay, and finally, it has a really strong community behind it, not only from the Linux Mint community, but because it is based upon Ubuntu, then there's a very large Ubuntu-based community. Okay, so Lance is saying this looks like it might be an interesting project to try out. It's more than just pasting a bunch of stuff over the top of Ubuntu or Mint like some folks do. Yeah, Lance, that's why I really feel like, as you're learning this, it gives you, like I said, not only a lot more appreciation, but because you are building it, you're going to learn more about what these packages do. You're going to learn more what the difference between ALSA firmware and something like this, rsync, which I understand. Like you've heard some of these before in the programs and stuff, but it's kind of, to me, it's really different when you actually see it being built with all these different packages. And then definitely you're probably going to learn things about dependencies and so forth. And then as you're probably using these more and you're learning how to build distros more and more often, I think you'll be able to really fine tune it for your use. Okay, so I would like to get to a point where, of course, first and foremost, I'm going to learn how to build it the easy way. But as I get into this further and I can learn how to build Linux from scratch, they call it LFS, then I could really optimize it. I could make sure it has only the things that I need. And then at the same time, it's not as bloated as some distros are. And also the performance, it will actually be there, at least for me. Okay, so that's my end goal, because by the time I get to that point, I would have become a lot more of a quote-unquote expert in building a distro if I'm starting from something easy and then going all the way to building it from the ground up. And then by that time, if I wanted to, I don't have to download a different distro if I didn't want. If I only wanted to use the distro with all the stuff that I want, then I could just use my own distro, which is great. And so I think this will actually allow other people who are interested in building a distro to actually have more freedom in, the type of operating system that they want, even though Linux already has so many amazing distros for people to use. So that's just saying this will give you a granular control of what you want instead of adding stuff you don't need. Yeah, so just even with this one, even though I picked only the things that I thought I needed, it was still like over a gig. It's 1.1 gigs. But I'm pretty sure as I get into this deeper, I could probably get it down to less than a gig, maybe 800 gigs. Maybe I'll put in a real a lighter desktop environment front end, and then take less stuff that I don't need, but it's going to be really hard in my opinion to beat something like Linux Mint because it does so many things. It has so many things built in already, and I really think it performs extremely well. Okay, but if you're coming from something like Arch Linux, then performance is going to be even better. Okay, and so for most people, if they are starting out and using this software, which unfortunately, like as I mentioned earlier, won't be available here in about a month, then you could always choose whatever's recommended. Okay, and then you can just choose additional things here. Okay, that you would need. And I think at least right here, even though SUSE Studio has made this extremely simple for the majority of people to use, you still have to know about these different packages and programs. Okay, because if you were to go in, something like system right here, right? It's like 13,657 packages or something like that. So that's a lot of stuff. And obviously, the naming of these are actually how the packages were named. And so it's not like named for like general users. Okay, I mean, you can look at the details and everything, but it's definitely not something that is easy to understand just by looking at it. Okay, I mean, even if you read this, if you are really brand new to Linux, most of this stuff would not make sense. And so I feel like if you do come here to build your own distro, I don't think it's going to be somebody who's brand new to Linux. Okay, I think it's going to be somebody who has used Linux before and who kind of has an understanding of the various type of packages that there are. Okay, but the program actually does a great job in giving you the main things that you need, so that even say that you didn't add all these other things, it would still work. Okay, so hey, good morning, Shatter. Thanks for joining. Shatter's asking, why don't you follow the easiest way? Download a mini net installer ISO and make it your own. Yeah, Shatter, I know you mentioned that earlier, but I'm not even sure what that is yet. So I'm just starting with something that I think is the simplest, which is SUSE Studio, at least for me. And then from there, I'm gonna build up upon my skill set and my experience. This is gonna be a long-term thing, but this is something you've seen me talk about many times on my episodes, is that I do want to learn how to create my own distro in the end, because with Linux we always value freedom. Freedom is probably the most important thing that we have. And as I just mentioned, like, even though there's a whole bunch of amazing distros and amazing communities out there, I think if you get to the point where you could create your own distro, I think that's like the ultimate freedom, in my opinion, because at that point you're not dependent upon any particular distro or community. And if we've been in Linux for a long time, we understand that it's hard to maintain this. I mean, they have to pay for the servers. You don't have to pay for people. I mean, a lot of people work for free when it comes to the Linux community, and it's not going to be something easy to do for everyone. Okay, and so if you've been in Linux for a while, you know that there's some distros in the community that they just stop being supported, because they can't continue running. And so in those cases, where you have a distro, a community that you really love, and then they no longer exist, then how do you get that same type of experience, with new updates? I can't see any other way. And so unless another community popped up that did something based upon that. But anyway, bottom line is, the end goal of this is, once I learn how to create my own distro from the easiest way to the ground up, it's going to be a lot cooler at that point. And so I'm going to continue going through this right here. I kind of learned a few new things since the last episode, but not really anything special. So as I go through this, if any of you have used this before, or you could give me some tips, let me know, because there were definitely some things that I did not know how to do or understood. So Shatter say download a Debian or Ubuntu Mini ISO, nearly 300 megs, which is what need net connection during installations, and use any remaster software for ISO making. Yeah, Shatter, I'm gonna have to try that out next. I'm looking to see what other options that there are. It's going to be like step by step, and I'm guessing this method that you're talking about, it's not quite as easy as the SUSE Studio method. That's what I'm guessing at this point. Okay, but that will probably be the next step. And so going back to here, once you have chosen your software, it shows you all the different packages that you've selected. Then you could actually go to configuration. Okay, and I will say that this is RPM based, and so it's not a Debian based distro. Okay, and I'm not sure if the new version of the SUSE Studio Express, I think you're going to be able to choose your whether it's based upon like RPM or Debian base. I'm not sure. I think it might be. If it is, then that's great. Then you could choose any type of base that you want, which is awesome. But I'm thinking it might still be RPM, OpenSUSE base. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Shatter is saying, "Wow, good gosh, and I had mine one already." Okay, once you go here to configuration, these are more detailed areas, and these are some of the places where I might have skipped a little quick on the last one. So the first place that I might have looked over right here was the actual users and groups. Okay, I did mention that at the end of the last episode, but I wanted to elaborate more. And so the default users here is root, which is obviously the most powerful user, and you don't get to log into that user by default. And so the default password that they give you is Linux. Obviously, you definitely want to change these passwords, but you can also add another user as well. Okay, so here's Tux. I could add another user right here and put in a different password if I want it. Okay, so whenever you log into your distro for the first time, the default user is going to be Tux. Okay, it doesn't allow you to log in as root right away. I mean, at the beginning is what I'm saying. But you can also add additional users as well, which is really nice. So, and then when you go further into this, you could actually, let me see, in the startup, you could actually add a EULA agreement as well. And I didn't really see that. I missed that whenever I was going through it on the first episode that I did. But here you could actually create your own EULA. And if any of you remember using Windows or Mac, all of them have a EULA. But then again, there's a lot of software that has a EULA, and a EULA stands for End User License Agreement. Okay, so if you wanted to add your own EULA, you could. And you could also have a graphical login, normal login, multi-user, single user. Okay, so here, if you actually had a server-based distro you were doing, like you chose like the SUSE server editions, you could also have some built-in databases here. PostgreSQL and also MariaDB, formerly MySQL, or maybe an offshoot of MySQL. And then here on your desktop, you could actually log in automatically if you like, or you could also have different programs to run right when you start your particular operating system. Okay, so that's more control there if you want it. And then here, I did briefly go over this. I did set up all the parameters, but this is primarily for VM type software. Okay, so and you'll see whenever you do the build, you could actually download the VMware version of this. And so whenever you are building you're installing in your VMware or your virtual machines, like VirtualBox, you have to set a couple of settings. How much memory you want, how large disk space you want it to take, your swap partition, and so forth. This right here allows you to do all of that at the beginning. Okay, so that if whenever you build it and you have this VM file, you don't have to set all these. It's already set for you. And then you could also do other things like using the logical value manager, which I didn't do here. But here's some other things. These are already by default. You could have a live installer CD and DVD, which is actually what I created. There's also VMware CD-ROM support, so it'll detect your CD-ROM. And then also enable UEFI secure boot. I should have went ahead and checked that as well. And obviously, as you know, a lot of modern computers with their CPUs, they all have UEFI secure boot. So that's something that you definitely want to choose unless you had a really old machine. And here you can add different scripts at the as well. You can add different scripts that you could run at the end of the build, or you could have scripts that you can run whenever it boots. Okay, so this is definitely a lot more technical, and this would probably apply more to server-based distros if you were creating that, or maybe it's just for yourself. You wanted to create different commands, or you want to maybe create directories or something like that. Whatever you want, you could run scripts whenever it ends or whenever it boots up. Okay, so those are the parts that I didn't really go into detail on my first tutorial. And then here you could also install other files as well. Okay, you could upload a tar file, zip file, whatever you want into your distro. And then finally, you could also do a build. And this is where if you check different types of file types, here's a USB stick, here is a VMware, the VirtualBox file, then whenever you create it the first time you build, it will create the default ISO. Okay, I chose ISO. If you choose USB hard stick this image as the default, it will create a raw file. Okay, so that's why I chose this one. And so that was the only one that was created. And if I wanted to build additional ones like a VMware, whatever, I could just do build additional, and then it will create another build, whatever I check. See, so now it's actually creating this USB stick. Okay, so I'm gonna close this because I didn't really want it. Okay, and so here under configuration, and I briefly went into this, but this is more important than I thought, because here you could see all the things that you chose for your configuration of your distribution. Okay, all the software that you chose, all these other settings right here, like your firewalls, network configuration, your personalization, all this stuff. So it gives you a quick snapshot of everything that you've chosen for your distro before you actually create it. Okay, and so the last part is, once it is built, you could download it. You can actually share this. Okay, so here is a summary of your distro, and the most awesome thing is you could actually share this on SUSE Studio's gallery. But like I said, unfortunately, this isn't going to be available much longer. But what this will allow you to do is share your distro with other people in the community. Okay, which is pretty sweet. And at any point in time, you can also clone this as well. Now, my guess is that whenever this goes over to the SUSE Studio Express, we're going to get a lot of these features as well. Okay, so let's see what other people are saying. Hey Rose, thank you so much for joining. Let me see. And here's Lance. Shatter's asking, making a RPM based distro is not quite easy. I've done for me several ISOs using SUSE Studio. Okay, so yeah, okay. Shatter say hola mi amiga. So she's saying that to Rose. So I'm assuming they're speaking Espanol. So doing better, Shatter. Okay, Shatter. Doing some hard work with Fedora Remix, especially for me and later for everyone. Shatter, okay. And so Shatter says single dev distro is too hard to be maintaining and fixing issues every now and then. Yeah, that's another thing, Shatter. I'm glad you brought that out, because now that you have an understanding of how this actually works in general when you create your first distro, at least for me, if you think about how all your other distro communities are built, okay, they're pretty much going through the same thing, okay, and maybe they obviously probably might not be using something like SUSE Studio to build their distro. Just think about something like Linux Mint, okay, they're probably building it from the ground up. It's probably got a lot more complexities in building it, okay. But here's the thing, so here you could create your distro, right? And then say you wanted to share this, and then this distro becomes really popular with the community that you're growing, or just people really like it. And so then it comes to the part where, okay, should I make a whole website created for this distro? And you could technically, like for example, I could take this ISO file, right, that I've created, and let's just say I created one that people really like, and then I put that on my website at Geek Outdoors, right? And now people download it. But then you have to think about all the other things that I think websites that we go to, like Linux Mint, Ubuntu, Arch Linux, any of these other websites that we go to get our distros. Then you have to start thinking about the realities of actually maintaining this, okay? So for example, if I was to upload this distro, the distro that I built, and let's just say once again it's popular, and I upload it to my website, well now there's going to be more traffic on my website, okay? And so that means I'm going to have to upgrade my server, so I'm going to have to pay more for my hosting. And then I have to think about things such as security as well. You know, what if somebody hacks into my website, and now when people download this actual distro that I created, it now has, you know, viruses and malware on it. Okay, that's another issue that I have to think about. Okay, so and I'm thinking about all these things because I have mentioned this earlier, where people who maintain a distribution, it's not cheap and it's not easy. Okay, and now having built a distro, at least my first one, I could see how this could be extremely complex and challenging, and I have a lot even more respect for these people who build these distros, because I'm just thinking about general things like that. I'm gonna have to get better web hosting, definitely gonna have to get better security, and then what Shatir mentioned earlier, if you are just maintaining it by yourself, what about bug fiscus? You know, there's definitely going to be bugs in this, okay? And what if people, like for example, in the community, they're having problems? You know, they need a place where they can discuss things, because now it gets into the whole area of, it's not just building a distro. Now you have to maintain it, which has definitely costs, and now you have to have a community around it. Okay, not only the support community, but also a development community, some people to do documentation, some people to do testing. You are basically building a software company. Okay, I mean, this is very similar to a lot of the IT companies and almost any business. Okay, that's actually what you're doing. That's why I see that whenever I see places like Linux Mint or Ubuntu or OpenSUSE, which is definitely a business of its own, or you know, any of them, you know, doesn't matter. They are all businesses, because that's actually what you have to do. If you think about how a business is built, it goes through all these same things. You know, you have to have a testing team, and then also you definitely might have to have a legal team as well, because if it gets really big, even if you put legal disclaimers on there, and then your distro causes problems, or their systems that they're running your distro on gets hacked, you know, they could try to sue you and stuff. And so yeah, there's a lot of things involved in just having a distro. And once again, after doing this first time, and as I get into it even further, I think I'm gonna have even more respect and appreciation for what all of these people do in these communities. Okay, so if you have not supported these people, I definitely recommend that you do that, because it's just a lot to do. Okay, and so going back to this distro, let's go ahead and boot it up. And this is where I might need your help, because what I thought was going to happen with the virtual machine, it wasn't exactly what I thought. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. So let me go ahead and start this. Okay. And so please feel free to chime in whenever you see this. And so whenever you load it up the first time, it's going to have the OpenSUSE intro right here. Okay, so here you have a couple of options. So this is actually a live CD DVD, which is what you chose. Okay, so this is just like you downloading an ISO, putting on your USB stick. It's a live installer. That's what it is. And so that's the very first one. Oops, I accidentally clicked on it. Okay, so that's not what I meant to do, but there were some other options on there. You could have loaded into failsafe, or you could have booted from hard disk, and that's where I'm kind of confused as to why. And you'll see this, that option, whenever you choose it, nothing happens, because it's not installed into the actual disk itself. Okay, and so that's where I'm not really sure why, because I thought that whenever you created this distro, that it would be very similar to other distros, you know, that you would actually get an install screen where you could install this new distro on your hard drive. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. It just seems like whenever this was created, it's only meant for you to have the live installer, okay, and not actually install this on your hard drive, which doesn't make any sense to me, because I don't think I would create a distro just so that I could like do a live preview of it. You know, I would actually want to install it. So let's get in here real quick. And so as you remember, from the previous episode, I did choose KDE because it's a really beautiful desktop environment. And if I remember correctly, OpenSUSE, it did have a KDE version even at the beginning when I first used it. And I remember Fedora was pretty much always GNOME based. Okay, but obviously you can have many different flavors of it. And so once that loads up, and you know, if anybody's used Linux for a while knows that the KDE desktop environment, it's not actually the lightest available. It's kind of heavy. Okay, and so it's not quite as fast as something like GNOME, and even more so when you're using something like Arch. Okay, so whenever I came here, and I did go through this briefly on my last episode, the great thing is all the software that I chose, it's in here. Okay, so, and I didn't have any problems with bringing it up or loading it, which is great. So basically it gave me the operating system for the most part that I wanted. Okay, so and obviously this isn't something that's fine-tuned. You know, if I spend more time, I would refine this even more, and I would really only have a distro that's built for this Geek right here, for Go. Okay, but as I was looking through this, what I didn't see was an installer. You know, typically whenever you load up any of these ISOs, you know, you download from Linux Mint or any of these other distro sites, there will be an option. Obviously, you're previewing it live right now, but there will also be an option to install this operating system as well, which I didn't see here, okay, at all. So I'm not sure if that was the whole intent with the SUSE Studio. You know, I would think that they would allow you to install the distro that you just created. And so that's why it had that option that says boot from hard disk. But here, I didn't see that at all. And then whenever I set up the configuration here, at the beginning, let me see, was it right here? Personalized? No, I think it was a startup. Desktop. No. Appliance. Yeah. So see there it says add live installer to CD and DVD. Okay, I'm assuming that's just a live installer. Whenever we load something up on our USB, you can have a live installer, but the problem is, where's the actual install? Okay, so I didn't see that. So if any of you know, let me know. I tried looking, but I didn't spend too much time on trying to find that, because I would actually like to install this instead of doing a live preview all the time. So I didn't really see that here. So shots are saying someone dev great distros are Arch Merge by Eric Dubois and RedCore LXQT by Ginham Mahmoud. Yeah, cool. So that's probably Arch base, I'm thinking. So yeah, so as I went through this, for the most part, I'm really happy with what came out. You know, I would still like to install this, but I did notice a few things with this, and I think it's just primarily related to KDE Plasma. It was just really slow, in my opinion, and I have a pretty powerful machine, and so kind of bummed out that it wasn't performing as fast. And once again, this is a live installer, and so, you know, I would guess that it's not going to be as fast, but you know, I've tried the live installers many times for Linux Mint, and it's pretty fast. Okay. So shots are saying another important thing is making software center and package management. Yeah, that is important, you know, because whenever you do create this particular distro, you are able to choose, let me see, under the software, the different repositories as well that you have here. Okay, so that is important, because if you're just creating this just for yourself, I think for the most people who are going to be doing this, then it doesn't really matter, you know, how easy to use it is or how complex it is, because it's primarily just made for you. Okay, but you know, going back to these communities, whenever they're creating this, they have to make it to where it's going to be easy to use for the majority of people. Okay, and obviously, you know, we have different distros that are not as easy, but the ones that are the most popular are usually the ones that are universally the easiest to use. So, and you know, since Shatter was talking about Arch Merge, and let me go ahead and look at those, since this whole episode should be about creating Linux distros, because I think I've already gone over the SUSE Studio part, and as I actually learn more, I will make updated videos, because this is something that I think a lot of people would be interested in the long term. Okay, so I'm looking at all the other Linux distros that are up here, and these are page hits. This doesn't actually mean that it is the most popular by this, okay, but I think for the majority of these, they're pretty much in line with the true popularity of these distros. You know, Mint is usually nearly always on top. Okay, so let's go ahead. So let's go ahead and Shatter look at what did you say? Arch merge. What's the other one that you said? I think Rose mentioned Gen 2. Okay, so let's go to Gen 2. So here's Gen 2. I'm gonna close some of these because I don't really need them. Okay, and what were you saying? Arch merge. Arch merge was another one. Okay, so there's 2 sites. And what were you saying earlier, Shatter? You were talking about you could download the Ubuntu right here. Download a Debian or Ubuntu Mini ISO. And so where would you actually do that? You know, would you actually do that at the Ubuntu site? So, and I'm asking a lot of these things because I myself have never done these things. And so that's why I'm asking. I mean, pretty much what I'm an expert in is Linux Mint. That's what I know. I know that very well. Okay, and there's so many other things that I could learn from it. So if you do have an answer for that, please leave that and I'll go ahead and look on here. But let's go ahead and go to Arch Merge. And so this is my first time to this site. Oh, this is cool. Let me go ahead and bookmark this. So definitely want to save this. Okay. So what is this? You could learn Linux skills. Okay. Okay. Desktop environments. Okay. Oh, cool. So it's XFCE. Okay, XFCE, very lightweight desktop environment. Phase 2, Arch Merge D, stripped down version of Arch Merge. Okay, so a lot more granular. Okay. Phase 3, no applications, no desktop environments. There are other desktop. Phase 4, let us install Arch Linux together. Let us install Archway. Choose it. Okay. So Shatter, this looks really cool. So just from what I'm seeing right here, this is very similar to what I'm trying to do here in terms of learning. Okay, so from here, what I could see here is through these different phases, you're actually learning from the easy way all the way to the hard way. That is actually what I'm getting here. And that's actually the same thing that I'm doing here. So my phase 1 right here, right now, is SUSE Studio. That's my phase 1. Okay, and then by the time I get to phase 4 or whatever phase number it is for me, it'll be LFS, Linux from scratch. Okay, so more than likely I'm going to be doing Arch, and it's been many years since I've tried Arch. You know, I've tried it a long time ago, and I don't even remember if I got it to work 100%, but that was a long time ago. Okay, and back then everything was really just more command line. Okay, and so there was really nothing else there. This is a really good looking site. And so let me see, there's what else is there this here. So okay, so I'm assuming, Shatter, that Arch Merge right here, it is a distro. Okay, and it does have XFCE as the DE, desktop environment, and so they're going to use that as the base for your tutorial. Okay. Yeah, Shatter, I don't really allow links on here, and I know, like, for people like yourself, I'm not worried about that. It's just that other people, you know, so I by default I filter out any type of links. Okay, and so if you do try to put links, it won't show up here. Okay, so cool. Oh, so this is great. So for this particular website, Shatter, do you primarily use it because you are trying to learn how to install Arch, or really learn more about Arch? That's what I'm assuming, because this really, it does look like it's heavily focused on Arch. Okay, so I guess that's why they call it Arch Merge. But wow, this is a really good looking site. Okay, so that's definitely one place I could come. And that's funny that you mentioned it, Shatter, for a mod. So as this Geek Outdoors Go community, I think y'all are the ones who gave me that name, Go. That is actually, if you look at my logo, it is Go. Okay, and I chose that for a reason. because whenever people see Go, they think of taking action. Okay, that's why I put Go on there. Geek Outdoors, but even the acronym means Go. Okay, but I never thought about using Go as the name of the community for Geek Outdoors. And so now that's what I'm going to refer to as, you just Go community or Go Geeks or something, and so that's in line with what I originally wanted in terms of whenever people saw that, they want to take action to do something, right? And so in this case, I could use it for the community name, so I really appreciate y'all doing that. And so as this community grows further, then I would definitely choose moderators because if you have a YouTube channel or you're on social media, as it grows after a certain point, there's just no way that you could actually do this by yourself. Okay, it just takes too much time, and you need a team at that point. And so maybe later, if y'all are available, something you want to do, I could choose some moderators to help out, as it gets much larger. Okay, so hey, Villain Millennium, thanks for joining. Yes, so Shatter, did you have any thoughts on this part right here where you said download a Debian or Ubuntu mini ISO? Let me see how you would do that, because I've never done that before. Okay, let me see. Let's put that on there. So Ubuntu ISO, Ubuntu mini ISO. And so, the primary purpose of this episode is, number one, to actually share my experiences with creating my first distro through SUSE Studio. But number two, more importantly, I just really want to discuss this with people who actually use Linux regularly and who use many different flavors of Linux, because I really feel that people who do come to this channel, there's a variety of people who come to this channel. Some people come for the movie stuff, some people come for video gaming, some people come for some of the marketing stuff as well, because I do talk about many different things on my channel, but it's all geek related. Okay, so I think if you're a geek, for the most part, you might be very familiar or might enjoy some of the same things that I do. Okay, but if you haven't seen it earlier, I did make an announcement earlier this week that I do have two new channels as well. I have Go Movies, Geek Outdoors, of course, and also Go Gaming. And so I created like quite a few videos, if you've seen on my site, and many more that I don't publish. And so I really felt like I talk a lot about movies and games, but I couldn't talk more about them further on this Geek Outdoors channel without it becoming a purely gaming and movie channel. So that's why I created my other channels. Okay, and so yeah, if you're interested in those, be sure to check it out. I'll leave it in the description area below as well. So what that probably means for Geek Outdoors is a lot of the content, obviously if you look at my channel, I pretty much have videos every single day on my main channel, but I actually have content in so many different areas. And so I'm constantly creating content every day, and that's not an easy thing to do because this isn't the only thing that I do. If you've been on my channel, you probably heard me. I spend normally 10 to 12 to 13 hours every day so it's a lot of work. Okay, and so maybe in the future, for the main Geek Outdoors channel, most of the content is not going to change. It's just that it won't have a lot of movies and gaming. Every now and then I might talk about those, but more than likely you'll probably see more geeky technical stuff probably on this channel as I'm learning, and more things that I enjoy. Okay, and so because a lot of this channel is really based upon things that I enjoy, and then other people who enjoy similar things come to my channel. That's the whole point of this community. People who are very similar in thought and also like the same things. So you'll probably see a lot more things that I enjoy. If you've seen my channel, you know that I really love marketing, specifically digital marketing. So you might see more of that stuff. And then things like this, I might do more in-depth stuff on me learning new things, or and sharing that journey, because I really feel like at least the people here who join my live episodes, I think you are a lot more adept at the whole Linux stuff and more technical than I am in these areas, and so I'm really appreciative of that. And so yeah, that was a long tangent, but going back to the Ubuntu Mini, so from what Shatter has said, this is really a basic version. So this is the minimal version of Ubuntu. So you would download this mini ISO. Let me save this, and so I might do this for another episode. Okay, so here you would download the mini ISO, And yeah, so I guess I could start off with this. I'm gonna do more investigation on this, Shatter. I do thank you for pointing this out, because I really do enjoy the Ubuntu community. Okay, because obviously Linux Mint is based upon Ubuntu, and a lot of distributions are Ubuntu based, and obviously underneath that is Debian. But it's a huge community, and I myself, I'm not a huge fan of just Ubuntu. Period. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way. As a distro, this is not my preferred distro. My preferred distro is Linux Mint, even though it's built on top of Ubuntu, right? But the community, the Ubuntu community, is huge, and so I would rather have that, in my opinion, for my distro. It will be Ubuntu based, and so this would be great for me to start here as a base and then go from there. Okay, let me see. Okay, so Shatter has good knowledge. You're bouncing around like a spring hopper. Yes, I am. I don't know if you're referring that to me, but Shatter is saying before LFS learn Slackware or Gen 2. Yeah, yeah, those are definitely Slackware and Gen 2. Those are not like simple distros, much like Arch Linux as well. Okay, these are more for really geeky people, more technically inclined. Let's just say that, because there's different types of geeks, and so VM and say some people come for everything. Well, not marketing. Yeah, yeah, VM, and like I said, these are things that I enjoy. Okay, and so if you see my channel, I do focus primarily on a few main categories. That's why I have those certain playlists. Okay, I really enjoy the entrepreneurship stuff. I think it's really important, and I did mention this in another episode where I think geeks, we are in the best position to be entrepreneurs because we have skills that are highly in demand worldwide. I mean, if you have technology skills, that's going to be the most important skill set anywhere. Okay, and so that's why I really feel it's an opportunity, if you are a geek, for you to leverage your skills and turn it into a lifestyle. Okay, because if you can, obviously, if you can make money from your skills and then live a more geek life, why not? You know, and so that's why that's why I integrate so much of the whole digital marketing entrepreneurship stuff along with the geek stuff, because you can use those skills to do more geeky stuff. Okay, and so that's why I talk about that. And so okay, RedCore and Calculate are pretty good reach spins based on Gen 2 before trying Gen 2. Vilenium VM is saying I haven't managed to get RedCore, so I'm going to look at RedCore. That's what's RedCore. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, RedCore Linux. Oh, it's Gen 2 based, just what you said earlier. Okay, yeah, I think VM, I think you mentioned that a while back on a few episodes ago. Shots are saying, in this case, you need to read the instruction of RedCore installation step by step. In case, report back to Gurnam Mahmoud. What country is that based upon? Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of options here. So let me see. So VM is saying I could tell not why we are heavily underpaid. Yeah, VM. I'm not gonna disagree with that, because depending on where you live in the world. I mean, for example, if you live in parts of Eastern Europe, or maybe if you live in parts of Asia, the Philippines or Indonesia, or India, Pakistan, any of those areas, for the skill sets that you have, you're definitely not going to get paid as much as you are in some place like the United States or Canada. However, since we are in an interconnected world, it becomes easier now for you to leverage your skills from many parts of the world. That's why freelancing, if you go to some place like Upwork, that's why places like this are so important, and there's more and more places like this coming up. Okay, so where we're going in the whole economy, and if you watch a lot of business type channels, which I do, a lot of the whole world in terms of work is going towards a gig economy. So most people are not going to get full-time jobs anymore. Most people are going to be doing gigs or side projects. So a person could have multiple side gigs as a living versus a full-time job. And if you actually look at the job market, if you go to, like I said, you go to some place like Indeed, or you go to Simply Hired, this goes on a different tangent, okay, but I just wanted to talk about this really quick. So if you were actually go here and I don't know, you could look up like a highly demand place, okay, like right here, and you would type in something like that. Okay, or you could type in WordPress. Okay, so there's a lot of different opportunities that you can work at worldwide, and I know it's not easy for everyone because in some places you can't work online, but I have used places like Upwork where I have hired freelancers from different parts of the world, from India, from the Philippines, from Mexico as well, and it is really awesome. Okay, and so it's awesome. Okay, now I haven't hired anybody from Eastern Europe yet, but I know in terms of technology skills, that's one of the strongest areas, specifically when it comes to programming. Okay, and so shout to Romania. VM is saying Southwestern Europe in a nutshell. Shout to say, well, probably your ISO will get disrupted. Okay, so shout to can't tell because I couldn't find any reason for it not to. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this. I don't know how I got into the whole work stuff. Let me get rid of those. Okay, so from okay, VM is saying working online is great unless you live in a country like Spain. Yeah, VM, I actually have been to Spain. I've been to Madrid and used to work as a consultant, and so we would travel to different countries. And I was actually at the time, what was the actual Spanish airline? I went to go work with them in Madrid. So Spanish Airlines, is it Spirit Airlines? It was Iberto Airlines. Yeah, Iberia. That's it, Iberia. So whenever I went to Madrid, we worked with the company Iberia, and when I went there, you learn a lot of different things when you go to different countries. And so I think Spain had a really tough time a few years ago, during the time when like Italy, Greece, I think Greece went bankrupt, and the whole area was just having a lot of financial problems. And so it's hard for people to make money even with their technology skills. But I'm hoping that where everything's going, once the internet becomes more interconnected, and they could also manage the whole currency system worldwide and security and everything else, I think for people who do have really high technical skills or are geeks, then they're gonna be more opportunities, is what I'm saying. Okay, and I use examples like Upwork or Fiverr and so forth. Okay, so yeah, so VM is saying, yeah, but internet's crap unless you live in a major city. I mean, VM, don't worry, we were worse than 11 years ago. Yeah, sorry, VM, but yeah, but it seems like that's a recurring theme depending on what part of the world that you're in. I know a lot of people, at least from the things that I've seen in Eastern Europe, it's not as easy, definitely. And especially if you were trying to make a living purely through the communities that you're at. You live in a small town, it's really hard. So going back to these, I don't think I'm going to be able to, like go into much detail in terms of like figuring this out, because I think we're going to have to spend more time on this. But what I'm getting here is that I got a lot of great things out of this discussion. So from what I'm going to do next, on the next episode or the next episode that I work on, what I'm going to do is I'm really going to focus on this mini ISO. Okay, because I think that having an Ubuntu base and starting from the bare minimum, I could just build up from there. Okay, and maybe I will also revisit SUSE Studio Express to see if there's anything else that I could figure out there. But once again, it's primarily going to be starting from the ground up. Okay, I'm sorry, starting from the easiest methods possible. Okay, so I'm going to start with those, and then more than likely I'll probably end up with Gentoo or Arch after that. And then, like I said, at the end, it'll be that whole phase of I'll be able to build something from scratch. Okay, and so now that we've talked about that, I did want to expand into something else because this is really interesting to me. specifically with what some of you are saying, Shatter and VM, and we just got into the discussion of work available in other countries, and so I'm more curious about that because doing a YouTube channel, you do get to interact with people around the world, and I think a lot of times if you've never like traveled to a different country or if you've never interacted with people in different countries, I think sometimes you get a very narrow understanding or a narrow view of the world. Okay, so I really think that if you are based upon a country like the United States or even Canada, and that's the primary place you stick to, you probably think the rest of the world is very similar to your country, which it's not. And if especially if you've ever traveled to a third world country, which I have, it's a way different world. I really feel like it's not even the same world that you're in. Like for example, when I traveled to Pakistan, I actually went to what's the largest? I can't remember the name now, but it's the largest city in Pakistan. When I went there, things were really really different. Okay, the the population was absolutely crazy. I think there's like over 11 million people in that particular city alone, and then the amount of work that's there, it's not the same. It's not the same as what it is here. And so the people that I was working with were really highly skilled, highly technical, and if they were to actually be in the United States, they probably would have made 4 times more or 5 times more than what they were making in Pakistan. Despite the fact that obviously the currency and the rates that you buy things are different. But that made me think a lot about what VM is saying here about you could have these skills, but it's hard for you to find work. It's hard for you to find a job, whether it's through a company or whether it's through being self-employed. So I was wondering, if y'all wanted to discuss this, like what are primarily some options, like especially Eastern Europe. I know there's a lot of people who are on tech channels. I watch other Linux channels. They are from Eastern Europe. Like, what is normally like the prospects for making money in those areas? If that's something y'all want to discuss, I would really like to know like what it really means to have these skills. And I think a lot of people in these areas, they are educated as well, but at the same time, it's still hard for them to find an income, a source of income. So let me see. What's okay? I watched that. Rose saying Ben's prepared Gentoo installation. Okay, VM based places are actually on places like Romania, Russia, or Northern Europe. Okay, so VM, you're saying like if you did want to find a place to work, the best places are in Romania, Russia, or Northern Europe. Okay, so I'm guessing the Eastern Europe block, they're not making as much. Okay. Okay, so I'm not sure what else y'all are talking about here. Okay, so yeah, so maybe for the next episode, it is approaching an hour. If this is something that you wanted to talk about, because I really do want to learn this more. This is a geek channel, and so I'd also like to know like how geeks live in other parts of the world, because that's really interesting to me. We have a lot of common things that we enjoy. For example, on this channel, a lot of people come on here. Obviously, we like Linux, so that is a universal thing that we could talk about. But I'd also like to know, as a geek, like what is it like being a geek in your countries? Like how does the the economies work? How do you find work, and also what are opportunities for geeks in that area? I kind of like to know what the challenges are and not. And so VM is saying, if you want to work as an IT, Romania and Russia have the most trained personnel, but the salaries are a bit crappy on most cases. Yeah, I kind of get that, VM. And VM, I think you mentioned you were a system administrator, and so so what is a crappy salary in those areas? Like if you can equate that to U.S. Salaries, because I'm not really familiar. I mean, obviously, when I was in Europe, I was also in Germany as well. We use the euros, obviously. but some countries, they do not use the euros. And so VM is saying countries like Netherlands or Germany just hire people from countries like Spain because they're highly trained people and it's cheap for them. Yeah, VM, that's very similar to the whole global economy. You know, we actually have more highly skilled people in all skill sets. Actually, it's just not technical, but it is true. We have more people with highly technical skills available now than we ever have. And so if you would, you would go to a place like Upwork, you could hire people in other countries. Like I said, like I hired somebody from India, and they were highly skilled, highly experienced, and then for the amount that I was paying them, it was a lot of money in their country. Okay, and so Shatra's saying sad but true. Okay, so that is a normal thing. VM is saying, well, it would be something like $1,100. That's the base salary. So VM, are you saying that's $1,100 per month in the United States? Is that what you're saying? Because let me see. If I look at countries like the Philippines, okay, because there's a lot of people in the Philippines as well. So I think the peso, I think they make about $7 to $10 a day. Yeah. So maybe like on average, if you are a highly skilled tech professional, then would it be correct to say in that part of Europe that maybe it's like $2,000 to $3,000 a month if you're highly skilled? That's what I'm guessing. Okay. Let me see what Glassdoor is saying, because okay, so average pay for people in the Philippines is about $15,000 a year. Wow. And so yeah, it really depends on what country that you're in. But this is where I kind of feel like it's a different I guess it's a different mindset in terms of like outsourcing and stuff, because here in the United States I think the majority of people in the United States, I'm just generalizing, okay, they don't like the idea of outsourcing and stuff. But then again, I don't think any country likes to have a lot of the majority of their work being done by other countries. Okay, I don't think that's something that most countries want. But we do live in an international economy, and so the benefit that I see here, let me see. Rose is saying, okay, well, you can call it outsourcing, upload, download software, but that's how it is today. Yeah, VM is saying, and the company you work for, especially IT work. Yeah, and so Rose and VM and Shatra, I think the benefit that we have nowadays of having a global economy, and like I said, once things start getting better in terms of our internet connections are available in more countries, currency stuff, security, all those type of things. Once those things get worked out better, then I think people in countries that maybe the amount is not as much, like I used the example of India, right? I pay for the amount that I paid them. That was like 3 to 4 times what they would get paid in their country in terms of the value. Okay, and so if we have something like that across the world, then I think it would benefit a lot of people. Okay, I mean it benefits me. I'm talking about the other side. It benefits me is because I'm getting highly skilled people, right? Highly trained people, and then obviously for the amount I'm paying, I'm getting a lot more value for my money. Okay, and then for the other person on the other side, that money that they make, they could really help out their families. And so that's what I'm thinking. And so obviously I wanted to support the people in my country as well domestically. But if you think about it as a business or just really general common sense, that's why a lot of these companies, even if you look at a lot of US based companies or any companies in any other country, they want to be global. And they want to be global for a reason, because you have to be. And at the same time, globally, if you're able to get the work from highly skilled people for a lower rate, then obviously that will be better for your business. So if you look at any, let's just use the example of any American company, their largest places of growth is not in the United States. Their largest places of growth are in other countries, specifically emerging countries or countries that are getting things infrastructure-wise, such as the internet. They're getting more people that are highly trained in that area. Okay, so VM is saying, because a self-employed person getting effed on pretty much everywhere. Yeah, VM, I think it really depends, okay, because obviously, if you have the technical skills, you have the experience, that's one thing. But then once you start getting into it, you gotta have to learn the whole entrepreneurship end of it, and the whole human communication part. And that's not something that can be taught. They don't really teach that in schools. You kind of have to go through that yourself. And Shatter saying, right indeed, VM, a global economy is the worst thing that can happen to most countries, including first world class. VM, I could see your point, but for me, I disagree with that in the sense that if it's a global economy, then your opportunities increase, okay? Because if it wasn't a global economy, and I could see where if you have a first world country versus a third world country, obviously the economies of scale are better. But the thing is, if you're able to give opportunities to other people, then they can go beyond their borders. Like a good example you used was you were living in if you're not living in a big city, right? That's already a problem, okay? And say the country just never developed beyond that, so you're stuck, okay? But if you have something like like this global world economy, and then with technologies like the internet, then at least you have the opportunity to expand beyond the country that you're actually at. And so that's my mindset. That's the way I think about it. And I know it's not a simple thing. There's a lot of things involved there, especially if you don't live in those countries. So I'm definitely not saying I understand what's happening in other countries, everything that's happening, but I'm just thinking in general, the internet, technologies, global economies has given us more opportunities above and beyond where we are at physically. Okay. And so Rose is saying information on IT accounting can be done by other countries except taxes. Yep. VM is saying every day is a problem, freaking cash. Yeah, that is a problem for everyone. VM, every single small company is wrecked by the bigger ones. Yeah, that usually happens, VM. Most of the smaller companies are definitely bought out by the bigger companies. It's a lot easier for them to buy a company that's already established versus building one from the ground up. So I mean, on Spain, for instance, most companies are small or medium size. VM is saying result, multinational, eat them alive, fraud, sell that stuff. Yeah. Coco channel, you're right. Hey, thanks for joining, Coco. And so, wow, this is a really interesting discussion, y'all. I know this isn't the normal thing, but I really feel like geeks living in other countries, they have their own perspective, they have their own challenges. And for me, I think this is a great thing for us to learn, because I think if you really learn more, and I have mentioned this before, by having something like YouTube or the internet, you are able to learn more about people and cultures in other countries. Okay, and so here, just by these discussions, I'm getting a lot more ideas on, or more thoughts on, like, if you are a person who's technologically inclined, or a geek, what are some of the things that you have to deal with? What are some of the opportunities that are available? And so, great. VM is saying, ain't that different in other countries, and in Europe, it's more restricted than Americans. Yeah, I think we definitely have some people from the UK as well. Whatever happened previously, that's going to affect people going back and forth working, because I know a lot of people go to the UK to work, and then they'll go back to the mainland countries as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode off. This was really an interesting episode. This was, normally whenever we have these live discussions, these live episodes, we never really know where it's going to go. Normally I try to have an idea of what to talk about, but to me, I think I get a lot of value, and I get a lot of appreciation from all of you who are actually adding to the discussion, because you have different ideas and thoughts that I never would have thought of. And at the same time, if people are watching this video and maybe they never knew that people are having these different types of challenges or different perspectives from other countries. So I think this is really, really important. And so thanks for the show. Thanks, Lance. Thanks, VM. Thanks, Rose. So let me go ahead and thank everyone, as always, who was here. First and foremost, Lance. My regulars, thank you. Shatter. These are all my regulars, by the way, except for one new person. So Lance, Shatter, Rose, VM, Villain Millennium, and also a new person, Coco. I think it's down here. Yeah, Coco Chanel, thank you for joining. And as always, anybody who is watching this video live, I do want to thank you for watching. And then also, people who are watching this later on, I also want to thank you, and I appreciate you joining our geeky discussion. And because, as I always say this, time is the most valuable asset that we have. So I really appreciate that all of you are coming here, adding to discussion, adding new ideas. And so if you had any other thoughts on whatever we talked about today we primarily talked about our first experience creating a distro, and everybody here is actually adding more things to it. VM, that's funny. Everybody thinks I'm a machine. VM, virtual machine. Yeah, it's just the name is hard to say, Vela Millennium. So yeah, he's not a virtual machine, or she. It's a real person. Okay, that's funny though. But yeah, if you had any other thoughts on this, or maybe the second part of our discussion, because here we got into a little bit more about what it's like to work, or trying to find work if you are in certain parts of Europe, specifically in Spain, Eastern Europe as well. And so I think these are things that are important. And so if there's any things that we could share with it, that'd be great. And so as always, thank you so much for watching. VM is saying my last name is Skynet. VM, you're hilarious. And so if you, like I said, if you had any other thoughts, leave in the comments area below. If you did find value out of these videos or any of the discussions we have, be sure to subscribe. And if you wanted to support my channel further, then you could do that at patreon.com/geekoutdoors. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you on the